Hi everyone, welcome to the TriEssence martial arts channel. Today we're going to talk about an interesting topic regarding whether or not the Chinese martial arts stance is practical or not. Recently I came across a discussion with some martial artists in China, which mainly specializes in Xingyi along some other styles. And the idea that group of martial artists gave me is that they think the way the Chinese martial art typically stand when they are fighting is impractical and out of date. Right? To give me an example where they once saw a Xingyi master in China who stood like this, which is the typical Xingyi stance when they are fighting, and they say he was up against a boxer, like a provincial boxer, something like that. And he was telling me that when the guy was stood like this, the boxer just the guy was trying to have structure and stuff, but the boxer kind of just dodged sideways and jabbed in the face and uppercut and knocked the guy out. Alright, thanks. So according to that guy who I talked to, he thinks standing like this is not practical anymore because your body is overly exposed and the hand in the front not really giving the guy any pressure, but you can just side it and punch you. And because the other hand is here, everything else is wide open. So he thinks, that martial art today should adopt to a more boxing-like stance, where the hands are closer to the chin and ready to strike, and at the same time have better defense. He also mentioned that the stance, like in Xingyi, right, is too wide and too spread out, and it's not as ideal as when you have a smaller stance, like you can see typically in Muay Thai, Sanda, and some of the boxers have a narrow stance so you can move around faster. Now, like I said in my previous video, I don't like videos about how one style is better than another, right? I believe that is completely untrue. Whether who's better between a fight depends purely on the two persons' skill. It doesn't have much to do with what style they represent. So this isn't a video about why boxing stance is bad. Right? They have their purposes and they have their use and they fulfill their function. This is merely a video I'm trying to discuss the mechanic and the principle as to why Chinese martial art stands the way they do. Because it feels to me that a lot of people out there don't really understand why they're standing like that. Alright, so now get on with it. The first thing I want to realize is reaction and reflex is very, very important. Alright? If you have very bad reflex or no reflex at all, no matter how you stand, it doesn't really matter. I can stand like this and I'll still get hit in the face. Alright? If I have no reflex or bad reflex, I can protect my face and I'll get hit in the ribs. There's no perfect stance where you need zero reflex and can protect everything, right? That's not possible. So, if the person has bad reflex, it makes no difference if you're standing this way or that way. He's going to get hit in the face. So the first important thing is you have reflex and experience, right? You need to spar with people at good speed so that you can react to punches. You can get familiar with it, right? You don't feel alienated when somebody throws a punch at you. That's very, very important, and that's always the first requirement. Now, if you have sufficient amount of reflex and experience in fighting and having punches coming at your face, then I would say that even the typical Chinese martial art stance, which is either this way, or Xingyi is a little different, but most martial art stands like this, right, with the front hand in the middle and the back hand by the elbow. I would say something like this isn't exactly a bad thing. It looks as if though you are, more exposed than if you stand like this. Right, but one has to remember, if this hand in front is active enough, you're actually giving him pressure. Okay, if you just stand it like a dead model, then yeah, you're not gonna have any effect. But if this hand is actually alive, you can actually give him pressure by just being here. Alright, because he constantly has this hand right in front of him that he needs to deal with. And he has to deal with this hand before he can actually hit you properly. Right? You can try to get a friend to stand in front of you and put his hand right up in your face. It's not a comfortable feeling, and you can't really have a clear shot. Sure, the guy's going to try to side step away, but so your hand can move too. You don't have to stay dead. Alright? That's the first thing. You want to put something up in front between you and the other guy, and he can't just punch through the thing. He needs to actually deal with his hand. And if he does sidestep and punch through, your hand can still react to it. This hand and that hand can block. The hand is not dead, right? Reflex is important. And second of all, if you actually look at the more recent years of the UFC competition, you will notice that a lot of the fighters, particularly John Jones, right, they also not really doing the classical boxing stance anymore. For example, John Jones often I notice he have a stance where he's this hand protecting his head, while this one he's constantly jabbing to the front, right? I mean, obviously he tend to eye poke the guy, which rose a lot of controversy. But the very essence of this hand being in front all the time is constantly keeping the opponent at bay. And the guy can't really have a very comfortable free shot at him when his hand is always here, right? All the time. So they tend to have to deal with this hand first. And when they deal with that hand first, he has a reflex, or he has a warning of the guy already. So when the guy trying to do something to this hand, he can then punch him too, right? So this hand acts as a warning and something to just keep the guy at bay. He can't ignore this hand. He needs to deal with this hand. So in a very similar way, right? Obviously, I'm not saying John Jones learns it from Chinese martial arts because he obviously has his own experience, but this is the basic motion and mechanic of human body in a fight. So Chinese martial art actually arrived to the same conclusion, right? Just as sadly, a lot of people in today's world, because they haven't gone through the fighting experience, they tend to not understand why certain things are done in a certain way. So in the same way, in Chinese martial art, when you hold your hand here, this is to hold the guy at bay. So that he can't just overlook this and throw a punch at you, alright? Because you can intercept, or you can punch him before he punches you. Now, when he's dealing with this hand, it gives you the warning. So you can then do other things depending on the signal he gives you. So this hand is important in the sense that it keeps him at bay, alright? And have something that forces him to work with. And the way some of the Chinese martial art works that they can generate power without holding this hand back. So in those systems, this hand not only keeps the person at bay and can block, it can actually, if the guy do choose to ignore it, you can just strike straight for his face, right? A strike like that is not going to be a knockout punch, but it's sufficient enough to keep the person at bay. So if I have my hand here, right, and the person ignores this hand, you can just extend it out like this. So like I say, it's not that much of a knockout, but if you hit him right in the face, it's going to stop him from whatever he's trying to do. So that's the purpose of keeping this hand here. So keep it here, keep him at bay, don't let him come to you, and intercept his hand. And also to move around so you have more room to react when he punches to block them. Alright? So that is the reason why Chinese martial art always, most of the systems have a different variation of either holding it here, or there, or here, or wherever, right? It's purely to keep your distance and give you a heads up when he tries to breach that perimeter, so you have more time to react. The other thing one has to consider is, if you have no gloves and you're defending like this, you're actually having a lot of holes in between. Right? With gloves on, it covers a nice area, but without gloves, there's a hole in the middle. And if you close this one, then the side is open and the ribs open. A lot of places are open. So this isn't exactly the best thing to do when you don't have gloves on, right? And of course, if you don't have the training of reacting to different punches and block, then this probably is the best choice because it doesn't require much reaction. As you pull back, you can defend some of the punches. But if you're really planning on engaging in fight without gloves, then it's probably better to learn to intercept and to stop punches rather than just taking out on your arms. But another thing that we were talking about is the steps, right? That person who I discussed with, he believes that having a mobile steps, a narrower is better because you can move around rather than a dedicated long step. While that is true to some extent, right? It definitely does have advantages in terms of mobility. But one has to also realized that the ring and reality are slightly different. Alright? For example, once again, if you look at the current UFC trend, a lot of fighters also doesn't use those kind of steps. They want to also have a slightly balanced step, right? Because they are facing the risk of takedown. If you stand like this and fight, almost nothing you can do against a takedown, unless you do a very perfect sprawl. But if you don't, it's very easy to scoop your leg up and tackle you down. But the moment you stand like this, it's a lot harder to do. I mean, it's not impossible, but it makes the job harder and makes it easier for you to fight back. Now, traditionally in Chinese martial arts, you don't see a lot of tackling, right? That's not really the thing that they're going for. But you can wonder this, is it really that they just didn't do it, or is it because everybody stood in a wider stance that this become not practical, that's why eventually they don't do it. So that is an interesting thing that you can think about. So if that theory is right, then that means that these stances were taken deliberately to make yourself more stable to throws and takedowns. And hand are stretched out so that it's harder for the guy to just close in the distance. Of course, there are problems to this type of stances, one of them being mobility. And since back in the old days in China, most styles fought like this, mobility wasn't really an issue. So of course, if you're coming out of no experience and you meet a boxer kind of person, you're not going to be able to adapt by fighting like this. But instead of like how most people think that, oh, this stance is wrong, you should rather think how to keep the advantage you already have, but be more adaptable to a mobile person. Personally, I believe that is the better approach. Right? And one more thing, a lot of the Chinese martial arts also have a stance like this, where the weight at the back and the front feet is almost no weight, and the knee is in the center line. Once again, a lot of the people I spoke to in current day and age think this is a very outdated stance. Like, why you want to stand like this when you can bounce around? Now, the reason for martial arts, certain Chinese systems to have a stance like this, all right, is to protect your balls, right, which is very, very important, and to protect your knees. I remember many years ago, there was a lot of people who told me, this kick doesn't work, right? This is a very popular kick in Chinese martial arts. It's the kick to the shin or the kick to the knee. I had many people, maybe 10, 20 years ago, telling me that this kick doesn't work. Why you don't see anybody use it in the ring? But, funny enough, when again John Jones, he'd been using this kick quite a bit before he was forced to take a penalty or to take a suspension. He was actually quite famous for using this, what he calls oblique kick, where he was stand like that, just kick that on the knee and then keep him at a distance, or this one on the knees and keep him at a distance. And a lot of people actually give him a lot of trouble for it. They think, he's going to break someone else's kneecap, which isn't very sportsmanship. Well, I'm not sure if you can actually break a kneecap that easily, but this type of kick does get employed a lot in Chinese martial arts. I mean, a lot of styles use this kick. Almost every single style that you run through, you're going to have a kick like this, right? Either into the shin or to the knee. And one of the best defense against this kick is to actually hold no weight on the front leg, so that you can easily move this part of your leg away. Or even if your reflex is slower and you just get kicked, because of the no weight, the leg will move back. Whereas if you're putting solid weight in the front, you'll get hurt a lot worse. Alright, so that's one purpose of keeping this leg mobile, is to prevent a kick like this, which happens a lot. Another one is to prevent a kick to the boards. Right, like it or not, Chinese martial arts really do like hitting people in the boards. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it is a fact. And a typical kick in the boards will look like this. Right, so it's a very quick flick with the toes driving into the board. And the kick like this almost have no tell. Right? It's not a kick where I swing and then he can see, but it's mostly just here. And often they will set up with some hand and then they kick to the board. And so it's very, very fast. And if you were to put this on your hand, so if you were to imagine if that's the guy's board, and I'm standing here, it will look like this. Right? It might not crack the nuts, but it will hurt a lot when you get kicked like that. And it's very, very fast. So one of the most common ways to guard against people constantly want to do that to you is this stance, because the board, if you look, is covered by this leg. And the quick motion from the knees would cover this part up completely. So when the kick comes forward, you cut it off, like that. And because the motion is so small, you can do it on the last moment, no notice. Even if he's fast, he's not going to be faster than you just flicking your knees. Alright? But that's not the purpose for standing like this, as opposed to the more popular position that people are fighting now, where the balls are actually quite exposed. So these are a few of the basic reasons why majority of the Chinese martial arts systems favor a hand position like this and a stance position like that. While some others, like Honga, they have a sideways hold stance, which the ball is completely out of the center line. So if the ball is here, they stand like this. So it also, in another way, protects that part of the body. And while the stance is there to help against any kind of stroke. But like I said already, there is mobility problem. So nothing is perfect, right? So I'm not saying this is the best way to fight or to do self-defense. I'm merely trying to explain the reason and mechanic behind these choices, right? The Chinese martial arts people back in the days didn't just smoke weed, get high, and then when they start to fight like this. They came from their own experience, their own encounters, and they developed the way that they think worked best in this situation. So before you can decide whether Chinese martial art works or doesn't work, still relevant or outdated, you need to first understand why they do it that way, right? Without understanding why, you can't really understand anything else, whether it's good or bad. Anyway, that's all for today. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.